Now back to loss of consortium, which is the one that in my opinion, we've hopefully are going to get a little bit more color, a little bit more detail. Okay. Count 2, loss of consortium against all defendants. Once again, all previous paragraphs are incorporated herein by reference. Paragraph 88. Halyna Hutchins was 42 years old and had been married to plaintiff Matthew Hutchins for over 16 years at the time of her death. That is relevant. The length of their marriage is relevant because, you're not talking about somebody who, just met her husband like a year ago. That's been a decade and a half of marriage, which is, all of the wonderful things and the things that you learn along the way, right? That's very relevant for a loss of consortium case. Halyna Hutchins and Matthew Hutchins had a loving, close, independent relationship. The proximity of their relationship is very relevant for this, for a loss of consortium claim. The nature of their close relationship gives rise to a loss of consortium claim by Matthew Hutchins, who, but for Halyna Hutchins' untimely death, would have continued to rely on her for guidance, companionship, assistance, and support throughout their lives. So essentially, no indication that they were planning on getting divorced anytime soon, right? They were planning on living the rest of their lives together. And that was cut short only because of this particular case. So like I said before, the discovery requests that will come for this kind of a claim, they're going to be probing Matthew to see, were there any kind of issues that you guys were having in your marriage? How was your sex life? How was this? How was that? Let's talk about the arguments you guys were getting into, so there's all of that would be relevant because it would be kind of getting to the proximity of their relationship. It would be getting to, what kind of loving, close, independent relationship did they actually have? Did he rely on her for companionship? Did he rely on her for guidance, for, when he comes home from work after a long day and he's fed up with his damn coworker in the next office that likes to eat carrots in the middle of the day and he can't stand the damn sound, like things like that could even be relevant. The fact that that they would be depending on one another, not just for, the physical intimate part, but also like the other aspects of marriage that are reasons for why you get married and stay married to someone for the rest of your life. All of that is going to be probed into in discovery. Paragraph 91. Halyna Hutchins was the mother of Andros Hutchins for over 9 years and had a close and loving relationship with her son. He would have continued to benefit from her love, guidance, and support, but for her death. And that one is, it's a lot harder to fight against a claim like that because it's kind of like by default, a kid that's 9 years old, they're probably not, and I see it in the chat about my reference to carrots. No, this is not. This is me having given guidance to friends who were dealing with that in their workplace. But no, this is not actually. I'm not anti-carrot. Carrots are delicious and very nutritious. But that's funny. But some people find that to be very, very annoying. And that's something that can really bother them at work. And they come home and they bring all of their work frustrations home. Right. So I added that just to sort of color how these things are, kind of play out in real life. Right. We all have those things that when you go into the office and, like maybe there's just that person that's always like too peppy, or maybe there's that person that's just like very much like Eeyore and you're just like, God, like, why can't you just be happy for a little bit, or something, and like it brings you down, or there are people that are like, trying to sabotage you or whatever. That's always possible too. That's super fun. But anyhow, but yeah, anyhow, but that's you guys get what I mean, right? Because we're talking about like the ways in which spouses support one another over time. And it's not just like loss of consortium. A lot of times people talk about the physical intimacy aspect, but there's also the, like talking about, um, reaching for certain goals that they have with their work or with their career, or, things that they want to accomplish in life. And you have a spouse, you ideally pick a spouse to, uh, to help you, make those decisions. Anyhow, that's what I was getting at. Okay. Anyhow, and as it relates to Andros Hutchins, who's a 9-year-old, it's a lot easier uh for this one to not be quite as probing. I mean, of course, there's still going to be um there's still going to be probing questions into, like, well, how much time did you really spend with your mom? Was she always away? That kind of thing. But I think it's a lot harder to really fight against that, because of course a 9-year-old is most likely going to be raised by parents that are together, assuming that they're together, they're not divorced, like it's a single household. It's just kind of the default. Paragraph 92. Matthew Hutchins' loss of consortium with his wife, Helena Hutchins, and Andros Hutchins' loss of consortium with his mother were directly and proximately caused by defendants. So that's pretty clear here, that it's foreseeable that those kind of safety issues on set would lead to this kind of a result, and that therefore they would have lost a loving, close relationship with their spouse or mom. Paragraph 93. Matthew Hutchins and Andros Hutchins suffered loss of consortium damages to be determined by the jury at trial. And then the prayer for relief. So we're talking about compensatory damages, the fear, pain, and suffering of Halyna Hutchins after being shot by defendant Baldwin and before she died from her wounds. So that they are separating that out from the loss of the value and enjoyment of her life, the fact that her life was taken away from her. That's even just those moments of pain are kind of separated out, delineated out in these kinds of cases. And then, of course, the loss of Halyna Hutchins' household services, the fact that when you have a spouse, you're sharing household, chores, tasks, and whatnot. Now we have a single father that is having to take on all of those tasks by himself. That is something that gets parsed out here in the compensatory damages. The loss of Halyna Hutchins' earnings and earning capacity. Now that is probably going to be the biggest bulk here. How much was she earning up to this point? How much, was her income steadily increasing? For example, she was 42. So this is at a time when not necessarily somebody is making their peak earnings, but generally speaking, we're talking about people that are expected to make quite a bit, and probably for the next decade, I would say. And then, of course, funeral and burial expenses that they had to pay for her, aggravating circumstances surrounding the wrongful death of Halyna Hutchins, the loss of love, companionship, comfort, care, assistance, protection, affection, society, guidance, training, assistance, and moral support of Ms. Hutchins. Of course, that's going to the consortium damages. Punitive damages, an amount to be determined at trial, prejudgment and post-judgment interest, costs, meaning the costs of litigating, such other relief as this court or a jury may find appropriate. So basically, that is what they're asking for. It's a lot. And I think that based on that's the end of it. My reading of this complaint is that it's a very well drafted complaint. There are a couple details here that I would have liked to see a little bit more detail about, allegations of why Alec Baldwin should have known, for example. They could have alleged he's been on many film sets involving firearms. He should have known, but I don't think they even necessarily need that in this case. That they regardless of what his experiences were leading into this film, they're alleging he still had a bunch of responsibilities that he did not measure up to. And that's that. So my guess is that this probably is going to settle. And I would think that the defendants would want to settle it sooner rather than later. I have no idea how Alec Baldwin is going to respond. I would imagine based on his behavior so far that we would probably see something along the lines of some Instagram statement or some roadside statement with from probing journalists or something on video with, of course, with Hilaria like recording on her cell phone by herself and like getting involved. Um, but I think that um, if I were defense counsel, I would be trying to get this settled as soon as possible because this is bad. It's bad from the looks of it. I haven't heard anything from any of the reporting saying that there was any measure of safety protocols on set here. Just a lot of people pointing a lot of fingers at one another, which uh, doesn't really do much for actually shifting liability away from these people. What you're doing is you're just sharing liability. So you're you're ultimately just getting other pockets involved, as opposed to uh, to moving the liability away from you. So I think that these all of these defendants that have been named are probably properly named. But I think yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I of course would love to see this continue through litigation. I think it's a very interesting case. And I think that this importantly, I think this is one of the reasons why I really have been talking about this case quite a bit is that this is not something that's supposed to happen anywhere, regardless of whether, we're talking about firearms on a gun range or firearms, out on the street or firearms out on a movie set, right? This is not supposed to happen. Like everyone can agree that this is not supposed to happen. And when we are talking about film sets, we are talking about a certain level of danger in a lot of different ways, right? Regardless of whether they're weapons or other elements. You can have electricity issues. You can have, like I have a video on the Twilight Zone movie where the helicopter crash killed a bunch of people in a very gruesome ways. And I think when we have these situations where uh, things go wrong on set, it's an indication that there's something in the industry that needs to change. And this is one of the reasons why I think that this is just so important is because, regardless of what you think of Alec Baldwin, I'm trying to be fair to him despite knowing his reputation. Um, but at the same time, it's pretty crappy. It's pretty crappy when ego and budgets and schedules result in someone dying too soon. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing. So, anyhow, those are my thoughts. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below.